Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Ellen Quaadgras, grateful to serve here in co-ministry at South Church with Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Lifespan Ministries, and with all of you in our shared ministry as we strive to live out our values of love and justice and connection within these walls and in the world beyond them. Welcome to this sacred time and space, whether you are joining us online or whether you are here in the sanctuary. I am so glad that every one of you, is here today. We begin our service each week by naming the truth of the land upon which we are residing. The Abenaki and Pennacook peoples were the stewards of this place for countless generations. They were forcibly displaced through colonization, yet their wisdom and connection to this land endure. As we approach Thanksgiving, we also recognize that for many indigenous people across this country, this is not a time of celebration, but a day of mourning. In naming these truths, we honor the continuing presence of all indigenous people and the possibility of repair. May this acknowledgement deepen our commitment to justice and healing for the land, for its people, and for all relationships fractured by historic injustices. The theme this month is the practice of repair, and in a post-election season that has left many of us unsettled and deeply concerned, repair calls us to bring an open spirit to whatever is in front of us, inviting hope into our hearts so that we may find pathways toward healing. As we gather today, let us lean into this practice, holding space for hope and connection. And let us practice, and this is one way to find some ideas on how to do it. The post-election edition is still available in the back. And if you are wondering what I'm talking about, this is the Spiritual Decathlon. If you want to know more, there's a link at the bottom and a QR code which gets you to a website with all the info you need. And Beth is waving in the back with all the extra forms if you want them. And one other piece is that downstairs we have a bulletin board that invites you to share your practices during this time so that we can inspire one another. So that's downstairs in Fellowship Hall. If you have a practice that's been working for you in this time, feel free to just jot it down on this card, put it on the bulletin board, and help one another in difficult times. I'm grateful to be leading this service along with Kirsten Hunter and our worship associate, Willow Young. Many thanks to Andrew McGeorge, who will offer us a few words on stewardship and why he gives. We'll be treated to music by South Church folk. We've already been treated by the South Church Choir. Susan Adams and Johnny Pfeiffer will both be serenading us on the piano. Today's service welcomes all ages, so we are glad to share the entire time together with every generation present. To our youngest ones here today, your laughter, questions, or wiggles are part of the spirit of this gathering. Thank you for reminding us, all of us, to approach this time with openness and joy. And because every good service leads to meaningful conversation afterwards, we invite you to join us for coffee hour. And today's question, to ask someone you do not know well: what Thanksgiving dish went awry that you had to repair? Or, this is one for your imagination: if you brought this dish to a Thanksgiving dinner, if you brought this dish to a Thanksgiving dinner, it would require relationship repair. And my example was rutabaga liver stew. So these are the dishes you do not want to bring to Thanksgiving. We have large print hymnals and listening devices in the back. Please ask an usher if you need one. Please silence your cell phone if you have one. And Kirsten will now offer some announcements.
Thank you, Ellen. Rutabaga liver. There is a new brochure in your pew. How exciting! If you are wondering what's happening throughout this holiday season, check it out. It has everything you need to know from now through the new year. Also, downstairs today is the first day of tabling for folks who would like to donate toward the holiday greens, the hanging of the greens in the sanctuary we fund via donations, and those donations are given in memoriam of someone. That we have an in memoriam section of the Christmas Eve order of service. So if you'd like to memorialize someone and make a donation to the holiday greens here in the sanctuary, there's a table set up downstairs. You can talk with a person, find out how to do it, fill out a form, and help support making this place very festive. There's also the hanging of the greens itself. We'll be looking for volunteers on December 6th to help put them all up. And that evening at 6 p.m., there's a holiday potluck downstairs. You can bring any meaningful holiday dish, maybe something that you've made for years as a family, or perhaps your tradition is buying something last minute at the grocery store and bringing it to the potluck. That also fits. Any tradition you'd like to bring forward for that potluck is welcome. And the last thing that I'm supposed to tell you about is this afternoon at 4 o'clock, right here in this sanctuary, there's an interfaith service. It's probably just shy of an hour. Multiple faith communities on the seacoast are coming together to mark this season and connect across faith traditions. So we hope you will join us here at 4 o'clock for that. And Anita.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to hold up some annual budget campaign announcements, which are in your order of service, and really kind of just take 2 seconds to explain what the annual budget campaign is. So, in order to operate this wonderful community, we all take time during this season to pledge what we would like to support our operating budget. So, the heat in our building, our lovely staff, all of the things that cost money. And you might even consider that a part of your spiritual practice, which might be part of the decathlon, maybe. So you could also get a star for that. So thank you very much.
Morning, all. We began attending South Church when we moved to Portsmouth in early 2012. Julia was in pre-K, and Nate was a rambunctious 2-year-old who spent the first 15 minutes of each service doing his best to hide in the footwell of the pew. For Lisa and me, this is the third UU church we belong to, but to me, it's the one that most instantly felt like home. This incredible space, having relatable ministers, and the presence of an awesome group of other young families made the transition here easy. What sealed the deal for me, though, was the first time I witnessed a senior youth-led service. I hadn't seen anything like it in any of my other UU stops, and I was just in awe of the wisdom and maturity of those kids. Back then, as a parent of preschoolers, it was a tantalizing glimpse into what could be, into the types of young adults I hope to raise. And now we have 2 senior youth. Julia is a senior, contemplating where she'll go next year, and Nate's a freshman who, and don't tell him I told you this, actually likes coming to senior youth. Seeing that little boy who hid under the pew become a young man who wants to be here is nothing short of remarkable. How'd this happen? It's because of this place. Well, actually, it's mostly because of Lisa, but it's also because of this place. Being surrounded by a community of elders and peers, of mentors and teachers made it happen. Also, we print the secret formula each week in the order of service. It's on the back, at the bottom, and it's the names of the professional staff of South Church. You are superheroes. What some of you know about me is that I spent 4 years working as the CFO of the Unitarian Universalist Association. As we emerged from the pandemic, the topic of financial stress in congregations was top of mind. Inflation was particularly hard on churches. When our individual increases in income don't keep up with the higher cost of living, that squeezes a family's disposable income. A natural reaction to this is to cut back on donations to charitable organizations. And while this thought may have crossed our minds too, we prioritized keeping our pledge to South Church consistent, even if that meant cutting back on other charitable gifts. And I should note that South Church has fared relatively well compared to other congregations who were much more reliant on rental income or who entered the pandemic in a more precarious financial state. We are stronger than ever, and that's a testament to you and to our staff. So inflation can make it harder for churches to raise money, and at the same time, it exerts incredible pressure on church budgets. We want to support our staff in times of rising prices, and the lion's share of what we spend around here goes to wages and benefits for our professional staff. And that means it's critical that we, as pledgers, show up year after year and increase our gifts when we can. We operate with so little margin for error. Not meeting campaign goals means cutting the budget, and we don't cut fat from our budget here. We cut muscle, and we don't want to go there. Let's not cede all the hard-earned progress we've made in recent years. The word that kept coming back to me as I thought about this testimonial was raise. We raise things around here. We raise our voices in song. We raise attention to injustices around us, and we're really, really good at raising incredible children. I hope the little ones in the audience today have the same opportunity that our kids have had and that a generation of kids have had. And to ensure that, we need one last raising money. I hope you join us in sharing what you can. It takes all of us to keep this special place feeling like home. Thank you.
Let our hearts not be hardened to those living on the margins. There is room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There's enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone.
Good morning. We offer these words as we light our chalice today. As we light our chalice flame, symbol of hope, symbol of love, symbol of light when much is in shadow, may we remember that we are part of community, part of a larger whole, connected and connecting. May we remember when the way seems narrow, there may be more room than we know. May this flame light up the possibilities and make visible what we cannot yet see as we move into our time together. I ask that everyone please rise as you are willing and able to join us in the reading of our mission statement at South Church. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Thank you. So many of you may know, and if you don't, one of my other volunteer activities is I do cultural competency talks for Seacoast Outright. And what these involve is going into businesses, schools, nonprofit organizations, et cetera, to talk about the unique challenges that are faced by our LGBTQ and transgender youth. And it's actually one of the things that gives me a lot of joy, because it's an opportunity to give people access to information, to be able to maybe widen their thinking and their experience based on the lived experience of people like myself that get to share what's going on, and give folks tools to be able to feel like they can be better engaged in engaging with people. But I had an interesting experience at a recent talk, because we had a person who at first just presented a question, but when we dug into it, it was a little bit, realized that she had something that she was really challenged by. See, one of the terms that we talk about, or one of the things we make sure we help folks understand, is the difference between the terminology between transgender and cisgender. The idea that one who is transgender is opposite of the gender in which they were assigned at birth, versus someone who's cisgender is on the same side of, so they identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. And this woman raises her hand and says, well, I'm not really comfortable with that term, because it's always being used as an insult. And my co-lead and I were really kind of surprised by this, because, yeah, we've heard this as a thought that's been tossed around, but never actually met anyone who really held on to this. And she was really adamant that it was being used in a slanderous way in her direction. No matter how much we said, well, here's the etymology of the word, here's what its meaning is, it's just another way of classifying within a larger subset, or within a larger group. It's just a subset within that larger group. And she wouldn't have any of it. So we shifted gears. We thought, all right, well, if she's really being charged by this, let's dig in a little bit and go, there, of course, any word can be taken with some type of pejorativeness. And I turned to my co-lead and I called her a chair. And said it really derisively. I said, you chair, you just kind of sit there, you do nothing, and let people kind of just plop all over you. And most of the rest of the room got a laugh out of it, but it wasn't landing. So my tried the empathy angle. Right? Well, let's acknowledge that, yeah, okay, you felt a little slighted, a little off-put, but maybe this is now giving you an opportunity to have a taste of what gender expansive folks feel all the time. And again, she wasn't having it. She's like, yeah, so what? I was still being excluded. I was the one being singled out. And we let the conversation go just another moment or two longer when we realized one of us, I don't remember whether it was my partner or myself, said, well, what were you being excluded from? She says, well, there was this transgender group. Oh, okay. So you were being identified as cis and kind of asked not to participate with a group who is transgender and trying to create a space for themselves in community. And you could see the rest of the room go, oh, okay, I got it. Like it clicked into place. And we didn't have the opportunity to take the conversation much further, but it was really striking for me that started to become the moment at which we could change the conversation by taking that moment of listening and curiosity one step deeper and just another step deeper until we could understand the situation. And although we didn't talk to her again, I could see her body language change and the way she engaged with the room and the rest of the presentation after that moment, to realize that maybe are times when people need a space that is free from other voices or other identities, right? And what we realized, or at least particularly what I realized, is the importance of how much that listening with empathy and curiosity is important, right? It became a real takeaway for me to hold that curiosity and keep digging for the root of a perspective that someone is holding, because hopefully we could use that as a way to create an opportunity for learning in a language that both of us could understand, that both of us could come to terms with. And this isn't just the responsibility wasn't just the responsibility of her as someone who may be cisgendered and perceived as being in a position of majority, but actually is also an opportunity for those who felt like their space was being invaded to show curiosity, show empathy. And while it's not necessarily their responsibility to do so, it is always an opportunity for learning to be able to maybe take someone who thought of herself as an ally, but was instead just being performative, to say, this is how we really need your support. If you're going to be an ally with us and for us, this is how we can do so. And it was great to see that we could have this conversation in a way that the rest of the room got, even if she hasn't had to. Oh, thank you very much. I now invite everyone to join us and stand as you are willing and able for hymn number 349, We Gather Together.
I'd like to invite us into a time of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life and love, in these times filled with potential learning, in these times when the wider world is so complex, when so much in our world is happening that is unsettling and outrageous and heavy, we come to share this moment. In our collective presence, we breathe in the unknown and the unfathomable. And with gentleness and care, we breathe out peace. And we breathe out love. We breathe in our fear, the fear of what might be. And into that climate, we breathe out attentiveness and kindness and mutual care. We practice breath by breath, moment by moment, imagining our way into healing ourselves and each other. We practice opening our hearts to all of it. In this season of Thanksgiving, first conceived in a time when this country was deeply divided, tied to a story that is complex and problematic. It is a holiday which, nevertheless, holds in it a deep truth. when we recognize what's hard, but still notice the good and offer it out, it can lift us all. Gratitude doesn't fix anything, but it can bring light to shadowed times. It can loosen the tensions that divide. It can help bring balance to what feels out of sorts. In that spirit, as the music begins, I invite you to call out who or what you are grateful for today. Could be people you love. It could be people who inspire you. It could be moments of kindness or a moment of sweetness, some action of hope that you witnessed. It could be some moment of care that you were part of or saw. I will repeat what you say back so that people online can hear it also. Grateful for nephew's positive change after a health event, still learning to walk. Grateful for longtime friends. Grateful for a sister carrying the burden of caring for your mother. Grateful for great family. Grateful for this community. Grateful for the sun rising every day. Was there another voice I heard right before that? Having hope. For your folkies. Grateful for your kids' health and talents. Grateful for your health and safety. Grateful for leaders that inspire. Grateful for your blended family. Grateful for invitations. Grateful for singing. Grateful for the board and staff. Grateful your family moved to this country so you could grow up here. Grateful for children. Amen. Grateful for the rain. Singing in community. Safe and welcoming community. Grateful for Kirsten Hunter. Me too. Grateful for new friends. Grateful for your mother. So we'll take a few more gratitudes if there are one or two. Grateful for crying babies. Oh, and grateful for the amazing senior youth those babies grow up to be. Amen. May we hold all these thoughts, all these cares, all these gratitudes, all these hopes, both spoken and unspoken, that we are holding in our hearts. May their light brighten our day. May their substance offer us balance. May the connections of our shared words remain with us as we each strive to be present, alert, and aware to a world that needs our care. Amen.
So we've heard asks for your generosity throughout the whole of the year, but each week, each month, we continue to make those same requests as our own way of showing gratitude to this community and thanks for the support you give us, for the support we give each other. Each week we take up offering as a way to say thank you to each other and to the larger community. And as part of our practice at church, we share our weekly plate throughout the month. And this time, during the month of November, our collection will be shared with Mainspring. Mainspring is the Seacoast Social Services Collective, serving Seacoast, New Hampshire, and Maine in building a stronger community by providing all citizens with the resources to thrive. Through a centralized and collaborative model incorporating many area social service partners, Mainspring offers a dignified, efficient, and effective model of care that empowers individuals to navigate a pathway out of poverty. Offerings may be given in our plate or through the QR code in your tablet or in your order of service. Thank you, and may we take up this morning's offering.
precious day. So we have a two-part homily this morning. One part and then a story and then another part. And in part one, I ask the question in our theme of making room at the table, what gets in the way? I answer in 3 parts. And don't get too depressed as I go from one part to the next to the next. Because remember, for every obstacle, there is an opportunity waiting behind it. First obstacle. I saw an ad the other day about lovely Christmas presents you could buy for yourself, which seems to me to sort of defeat the purpose of Christmas giving. It led me to think about ads for tech gadgets, which say things like your world, your way, or self-help books that say things like invest in yourself, build the lifestyle of your dreams. And I think no wonder the woman in Willow's story struggled to understand a perspective different from her own. We are constantly being invited to center ourselves, our own well-being, our own wants and needs, which can make it hard to make room, real room, at the table in a congregation or a community or anywhere. But especially for people who are not in the center, it makes it hard to make room for anyone, but especially for people who are not in the center, who are at the margins of one's own particular experience. If you're cisgender, if you were born the gender you currently identify with, you don't personally know what it's like to be trans or to need your own space to talk to one another. You can't understand everything about what that's like. If you're white, you can't know what the experience is of someone who's a member of the global majority, what it's like to be Hispanic or Asian or to be a black man from Chicago. You just can't know. If you're from the suburbs, you don't know what it's like to have been a kid from the inner city. If you're from the city, you don't know what it's like to have been raised rural. Northerners have different experiences from Southerners. There's Christian and non-Christian, military families and not military families, neurodiverse or not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. None of us can understand everything about where someone else is coming from or what they might need from you. How do you make room at the table when you simply can't, from your own experience, fully get it? And then, here's a second piece. We are living in times where we keep getting the message that there is not enough to go around. There's not enough land, there's not enough food, there's not enough money. That can feel scary. And this idea that there's not enough for everyone can lead people to feel like we have to compete with each other in order to make sure that we are okay or our family is okay. But all that competing can be pretty exhausting. And when we're so focused on making sure we're okay, it can be hard to even notice other people around us, let alone think about inviting them to share what little we feel we have. So, are you depressed with me yet? Hang in there. I've got one more, which is trust. Lack of trust gets in the way of making room at the table. And it seems to be connected to those first two. If I'm all worried about whether I'm going to be okay, and if I'm so preoccupied I lose sight of other people, and if they happen to be people at the margins of my own experience, then I'm not going to know them very well. And if I don't know them very well, and I hear something about them that makes them sound untrustworthy, I might believe it, even if it's not true. And if I believe bad things about other people, I may not invite them to my table. And then I will never get to know them. And that just repeats the cycle, and it's sad. And sometimes it's ourselves we don't trust. What if I really do want to make room at the table, in this congregation or in the community, but if I don't trust myself to know enough about people whose life experiences are different from my own? I mean, maybe I've read things or listened to people talk about what life is like for someone else, and I'm trying to be welcoming, but I may still be afraid of serving the wrong food or saying the wrong thing or just messing up. If I don't trust that it's okay to make a mistake and learn from it, if I don't trust in the power of forgiveness, if I don't trust in the resilience of relationships, I miss the magic of getting to know someone personally. I miss all kinds of magic. All of it. Our culture's constant encouragement to center the self, the scarcity thinking and the competition that it leads to, and the mistrust that can get hold of us. All these things can separate us, alienate us, and cause us to miss all kinds of magic. And that's sad. But don't be too depressed, because it is only once we see and understand the obstacles before us that it becomes possible to change. And sometimes a story helps us show why it all matters.
So let's tell a story. We've got some storytellers in the house, some actors. They're silent actors. I will be their narrator. Once upon a time, there was a hardy farmer who was standing in front of the curtain over here. The hardy farmer went to bed one night and found himself in the midst of an unexpected dream. It began with mysterious music. And then a dining table appeared. The table was overflowing with a magnificent feast. Ooh, look at that feast. It looked and smelled delicious, yet the people seated around the table were emaciated and sickly, moaning with hunger. They were moaning with hunger. They looked so hungry. As the dreamer dreamed, he realized that each person held a very long spoon. With it, they could reach the feast, but the spoon was too long to get the food to their mouths. They tried and tried again, but bringing that nourishment to their bodies proved impossible. In spite of the abundance before them, they were starving. And that dream ended. The dreamer roused a little bit, unsettled by the dream he'd just had. He tossed and turned. The dream that faded away left him thinking for a moment, but then a little while later, he fell back asleep and began to dream again. This time, there was music again. and a scene once more opened before the dreamer. This time he was surprised to see the very same dining room filled with the very same people and the very same marvelous feast. But the people were not moaning with hunger. The people were sitting contentedly, talking with each other, their bellies full from the abundance before them. Just like in the first dream, these people were holding very long spoons. But one person would dip their spoon into a bowl of stew, and rather than struggling to feed themselves, they would extend the spoon out and feed the person seated across from them. That person smiled, gave thanks, and returned the favor. And this was how the meal continued. One person, then another, filling their spoon and passing nourishment around. The dreamer smiled in his sleep. He opened his eyes and for a long while gazed up at the ceiling, thinking about the two dreams he had had. He had learned something so important, and for the rest of his life, he would not forget that lesson. The difference between joy and suffering is much less than we imagine, and it isn't imposed upon us. What creates each condition is how we choose to be with one another. When we put trust in those around us and are trustworthy ourselves, when we realize the importance of depending on one another and giving what we are able so others can depend on us, when that spirit of generosity is nourished, then we never go hungry. Amen. We can clean up this whole little set here now. Thank you, storytellers, and thank you, dreamer, for your dreams. That was a sort of funny dream, but I really love the moral of the story. How we choose to be with each other is what matters. I wish it was enough to just say that. I wish we could just agree, yeah, let's be like the second table. Let's be generous and take care of each other and trust one another, and that generosity and caring will come back to us and everything will be great, even if we have long-handled spoons. But as Reverend Ellen was sharing, it's not quite that easy. Reshaping how we choose to be with each other in these times, it requires a willingness on our part to make different choices. And making different choices requires us to realize some of the choices we're making that aren't serving our own future or the future greater good. And we know that not only are we not all holding long spoons, some of us have regular sized spoons, some of us have no spoon at all, some of us aren't even sitting at a table. It can seem an impossible task to change how things are. But when you think about it, change is happening, whether you like it or not, and each of us plays a role in shaping that change, whether we do it consciously or not. The question isn't whether or not you play a role. The question is whether you be intentional about the role you choose to play. When we all stand together on Sunday and say, at South Church, we nurture spiritual growth, we're naming a commitment to a practice of connecting ourselves to something larger than ourselves. That's it in a nutshell. Spiritual growth is finding ways to connect ourselves to something larger than ourselves. And we say it every Sunday, which means we've done the hardest part of the work. We've made that commitment. Once you've made the commitment, then just comes the practice. And here's the good news. We're not doing it alone. Look around you. Look at all of the people in the room who are doing it together with you. And we get to compare notes. It's not cheating to look over the shoulder of somebody else. It's not cheating to say, hey, I tried this and it worked really well. That's great. Teamwork makes the dream work. So I'm going to tell you a story of someone I've copied from, someone whose notes I've taken and put in my own pocket, and I've found it to be helpful. It's an antidote. There are many. That's a part of what this is all about. There are so many different ways to practice how to connect ourselves to something larger than ourselves. This is one. I was at a Creative Mornings talk in 2017 at the Music Hall Loft. It was led by a woman named Judy Ringer. She is a martial artist with a 3rd-degree black belt in Aikido. She's cool. Aikido, she explained that day, translates as the way of harmonizing or blending with energy. In the 35 years of practicing Aikido, she told us how she had learned to apply its lessons to all kinds of situations in her life, not just in physical confrontations or physical situations, but also mental ones. And in either context, she says, the lessons of Aikido are very helpful. Aikido, as it turns out, is all about being intentional with the choices we make. And you can practice in your words just as you can practice in your actions. When I went and saw her, at that time, my older son, was 17 years old. He's 24 now. At that time, I was feeling like he and I were always fighting with each other. I wasn't starving, like in the story, but I was struggling. I didn't want my relationship with my son to be like that anymore. I was sad and I was tired of us not understanding each other and not working together. I didn't want to be in a confrontation with him all the time, but I tried and could not figure out how to change the patterns we kept repeating. I kept trying to feed myself with the long spoon. It wasn't working. At her talk, Judy asked for a volunteer from the audience, and a woman came up and she demonstrated something about Aikido. She asked the woman to put up her hand, and Judy put her hand against the woman, and Judy started to push, and the woman started pushing back. Now, Judy hadn't asked her to push back, she just did it, which was the point. When we come into a situation, it's pretty natural, especially in the culture we live in. Someone pushes us, we push back. There's really kind of two things. Some of us don't push back. Some of us are like, okay, fine, and we bail right out. We just avoid, right? We dodge it. But often, they push us, we push back. They throw a punch, we throw a punch back, right? Aikido, Judy explained, is choosing a third path, not pushing back, not bowing out or avoiding. The third path has 3 steps. First, so she calls another volunteer up to help her demonstrate this. And the first thing she does is she bows to that person. So this is a critical piece, and I've realized this over time. I see this as, in a verbal interaction, in a non-physical interaction, if someone's not about to cause you harm, first begin with respect, right? So what's the bow that you do? What do you offer someone that tells them, I respect you? That's step 1 of Aikido. Step 2 is get out of the way of whatever's coming at you. This is brilliant. So someone's throwing a punch, and instead of standing to receive it or block it, you step out of the way of that punch. And it's actually kind of a pivot. So in the physical demonstration, she has this person who's standing in front of her, throwing a punch, and she steps out of the way and meets it with her hand. Her other hand, as she meets that punch, she places on the shoulder of the person. So she has moved her body from being in front of the person to being alongside them, and now she's holding their fist in one hand, cupped, and her hand is on their shoulder. And then she demonstrates to the whole audience how now she is in control. She's got the hand cupped, hand on the shoulder, and she can walk with the person using their energy. She can do some pretty cool Aikido things that she learned over 35 years and kind of buckle them to the ground if she needs to. Or she can kind of walk and turn them in whatever direction she's hoping they might go. That's the physical visual of it. The verbal equivalent is pretty cool. So in a verbal exchange, she explains we have similar ingrained tendencies, right? Someone asserts something and we want to resist. And she says, instead of that resisting, when they assert something, the equivalent of that stepping out of the way is acknowledging what they say. And then the equivalent of walking alongside of them is listening. Someone says something, you acknowledge what they say first. Then you walk alongside them, you listen. At that point, after those first two steps, then you think about what you want to say in return. In verbal situations, Judy says, we can have a tendency to equate acknowledgement with agreement. So we don't want to acknowledge what they say because we think it means we're agreeing with them. But it's not the same thing. Acknowledging what someone says is different than agreement. It's a witness. It's I'm hearing what you are saying. I'm hearing what you're telling me about you. In Willow's story, right? When they started to dig a little deeper with that person, they were acknowledging what she was saying and walking with her, listening. We also think of the listening part as listening doesn't mean that you have to do what the other person is telling you. So we get worried about that too. We get worried about acknowledging because we think it means we're agreeing with them. We get worried about listening because we think it means we're going along with them. But it's just the beginning. It's letting them feel our company and our witness and our connection. And then amazing things can happen. The magic that Reverend Ellen was talking about. Conflict isn't positive or negative, Judy Ringer taught me. Conflict just is. If we're alive, we're going to have it. But conflict can be an opportunity. It can be a teacher. I heard that in Willow's story too. With every moment like that, there is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow. And we are what we practice. We have to practice different choices in order to change the hardwired habits we have in our bodies. We have to practice to dismantle that sort of selfish-focused, center-in focus that is so common in our culture. We have to practice to understand the other. We have to practice meeting people where they are, that curiosity. We have to practice trust. I did not leave that Creative Mornings talk in 2017 as an enlightened parent. I did not get home and know exactly what to do with my kids. But I did leave with an intention to practice mental Aikido. And over the years since then, I have come back to those ideas again and again. And my sons, bless their hearts, have offered me so many opportunities to practice. I have also discovered other opportunities in many contexts, and what I love is that I found this mental Aikido is not asking me to disregard my feelings or my needs. It does not ask me to be selfless. That's not what we're trying to do. Instead, it teaches me that it is in my best interest and in the best interest of others to find connection, if it's possible. To be open to change, to be open to what might happen if, to blend with the energy of the world and to harmonize, to pull up another seat at the table. May it be so. Let's sing together hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
As we extinguish our chalice today, let us take the light and the warmth and the wisdom into our hearts and out into the world to carry through us the entire week and the entirety of our lives. Thank you.
I invite you, after the closing words, after the postlude, to greet one another, perhaps sharing a time you made room at the table for someone and what you learned or gained from that experience. Or perhaps something about a Thanksgiving dish that you needed to repair or one you would never bring. These words from Reverend Sarah York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts they are, and, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Amen. Go in peace.
This is how we gather in